everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Ron Reviews podcast. I know I have a bunch of other podcasts on here so far, but those are the ones that I want to do with co-hosts, and I wanted one that I could just do solo to talk about comics or movies or whatever, any books I'm reading. I think it's mostly going to be comics because I've tried to do some Batman comics and do regular style videos and just discuss the comics and what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. And I feel like there are so many YouTube channels that are probably better than mine as far as dissecting comics goes. So I just feel like I'm a little late to that party, and everyone has probably covered all the comics that I want to talk about. So I figured it would be more interesting to talk about them in a podcast form, and I could still get my thoughts out on, famous runs that even if people have talked about them to death, I can still put my own spin on it in a podcast form. And the idea for this came about when I first started reading the Geoff Johns Green Lantern run, and I was at work and I wanted to listen to a podcast about it. And I'm sure there are podcasts somewhere out there about Geoff Johns Green Lantern run, but I didn't really see many on YouTube. You have the typical stuff where it's people just telling you the whole story beat by beat. And then there are reviews of these issues and these stories as well. But it just didn't look like there were any podcasts on YouTube that were long form talking about this whole run, at least from what I searched. So I figured I'd make one. Why not? Because I've been reading it for a couple months now. It's long, and I finally think I have a good grasp on it to talk about it. This run is pretty funny because I didn't really get into it the first time I tried to read it. I read Green Lantern Rebirth, which is the first thing I'm going to talk about. But it was a little intimidating because I didn't really know the whole history of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. So some of it was a little confusing, even though I think Geoff Johns tried to design it in a way where it wasn't anybody could pick this up as their first Green Lantern comic. But I did feel like, I don't know, maybe I should go back and read a lot of Green Lantern to try to get into it. I kind of did the same thing that I did with Dune. When I read Dune for the first time, I think I got halfway through and I just put it down. It wasn't clicking for me. For whatever reason. And then a couple years later, I picked it up again, and then it really clicked. I got into it, became obsessed with it, started making videos on that. So that was pretty much what happened the second time I tried to read this whole Green Lantern run. So Rebirth is obviously the first thing. This came out in 2004. It's a mini-series, so this whole thing started out as a mini-series, and obviously written by Geoff Johns with art by Ethan Van Sciver. I've read Rebirth 3 times. The first time, I thought it was pretty cool, a little confusing. For example, there are a lot of characters in there. You got somebody like Guy Gardner, who's turning into the warrior or whatever he was in the comics for a while. And that confused me because I just knew him as a Green Lantern from maybe some of the comics. I think I tried to read some of the Justice League that he was in, that run. And then he was in Justice League Unlimited, which is a great series that was a spinoff of the original Justice League cartoon. So it made me think, should I go back and read all the Guy Gardner stuff? It's just never ending. So I finally just had to say to myself, look, just forget all the baggage and go into it like this is it, and just see what you can get out of it by not going full on into the old issues, because I would probably never get to this point. And the thing I realized is once you get past Rebirth and you get a little further into Geoff Johns' run and with the Green Lantern Corps series that goes along with it, things start to make more sense. And they do help you out a lot if you don't know the history of these characters. I was worried that I wouldn't feel the impact of the feud between Sinestro and Hal Jordan. But you get enough issues into this run, and Geoff Johns, he's very smart for doing this, he does a origin story. So you get that relationship with Hal and Sinestro. And it really helps because then when you go into the future, it carries more weight, even if you haven't read the old stuff before this run. So it is really well done. And I think it's definitely one of those things that you just have to stick with, even if things don't really make that much sense at first. Okay, but before we go into all that stuff, let's start with Green Lantern Rebirth. Like I said, 2004 series, this was a really big deal, bringing back Hal Jordan. He's been dead in the DC universe for so long. Geoff Johns teams up with Ethan Van Sciver, and the art in this is amazing. It's super detailed. Everything looks really cool. I actually watched a couple YouTube videos on Ethan's channel where he goes through every issue of this. I think it's called Secret Commentary or something. He really goes into all the symbolism that he put into it. And I love stuff like that because it's not just him trying to crap out a bunch of images and get this thing done on time. You know what I mean? He's one of those artists that really has to take his time and create something that on the surface is really cool comic book art, but it's also a little deeper than that too. And there are little things that maybe you don't pick up on the first time you read it. And that's why I said I read it 3 times. And the third time I read it, I enjoyed it way more because it's that mixture of Geoff Johns' really fun, exciting writing with Ethan's art that just takes things to another level as far as, you know, the symbolism of the Green Lantern ring and the whole rebirth of Hal Jordan. And it starts off very ominous, but it brings Hal Jordan back and it brings the Green Lantern Corps back in a big way. It kind of gives the whole DC universe hope again. So this was a great starting point for Geoff's run on Green Lantern. It's interesting because a lot of times these type of classic stories, and I do consider Green Lantern Rebirth a classic. It's definitely a DC classic. But the unique thing about it is it started the whole run. It wasn't just a self-contained thing. Right after this, I mean, there's a really cool little Darwin Cook story. Well, it's a Geoff Johns story, but it was drawn by Darwin Cook. And this isn't so much an origin, but it just goes back to Hal Jordan when he was a little kid. It kind of explores his relationship with his father, and it was a nice, touching little story, but it's not going into the origin yet because Geoff Johns saves that for later on in his run, which kind of sounds confusing because you would think, okay, well, why wouldn't he do the origin first and then do Rebirth and then do this and that? But he does it in a way where some of the story elements relate to the future stories with Atrocitus and Black Hand, and it kind of foreshadows everything to come. So it was really smart the way he did that. And then, like I said, at the same time, it really gives the reader a sense of the kind of friendship that Sinestro and Hal had originally. You almost kind of understand Sinestro a little bit. And I wouldn't say feel bad for him, but you just understand his motives, even though he does some really terrible things. So when the actual Green Lantern series started, I do admit I didn't really love the first couple issues, mainly because it focuses a lot on Hal Jordan, the pilot, on Earth, which isn't as interesting as Hal Jordan, the space cop, you know, going on adventures and fighting cool aliens. And, you know, that's just, all that stuff is a lot more interesting to me, and it's more colorful and it's more fun. And that's why I think around this time, when the Green Lantern Corps started, that's the series that I really feel like you have to read along with Green Lantern, because everything ties together. And that series was written by Pete Tomasi, and Patrick Gleason did the art for the most part. I mean, there were other people in there too, but that was really like the main team. And they're great too. They also had, I remember when the new 52 came out, they had actually a really underrated run on Batman and Robin. So I would check that out too. But yeah, their Green Lantern Corps is really cool. And that's the stuff that I liked more because it kind of explored the day-to-day lives of the Green Lanterns on Oa, which is it's basically the home planet of the Green Lanterns and the Guardians as well. So yeah, I really dug that series right from the start. The Green Lantern, the Geoff Johns Green Lantern, I feel like it took a little bit for me to get into just because, like I said, it was on Earth. There was one story I remember where it's kind of like a behind enemy lines thing where because Hal Jordan doesn't fly a plane with his ring on because he feels like it's cheating. So he wants to be, a regular pilot like everybody else, and he gets shot down behind enemy lines, and it's this whole big thing. I mean, these stories are not bad. They're cool ideas. I think I just wanted to get right to all the cosmic space stuff, because it's just more interesting to me. But yeah, like I said, there are some really cool setups with the Green Lantern Corps. I think Kilowog might be one of my favorite Green Lanterns. I just love the way he looks. I love his design. He's basically like the drill sergeant of all the Green Lanterns. So it's just a fun character. And Guy Gardner is one of the main characters in the Green Lantern Corps series. Hal Jordan is in it sometimes, but it's just kind of on and off, since he has his own series. And then there are some new characters too. Soranik comes to mind. She's a pretty well-developed character early on. I like that she's like a surgeon. And then spoilers, it's later revealed that she is actually Sinestro's daughter, which makes sense because she's also from Korugar. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That's Sinestro's home world. So yeah, she was a pretty interesting character from the get-go. And then I really loved all the Guy Gardner stuff. I just like him and all the other members of the Corps, going to they have like a cafeteria, just little things like that. I like the day-to-day stuff with them, just being space cops. And then I also like that they explore, it's kind of like a job where they get vacation time. And I want to say it's issue 6 who drew it. I think Dave Gibbons of Watchmen fame. I know he drew it, but I think he wrote it as well. It's basically this pretty much standalone issue where Guy Gardner goes on vacation on this planet that it has like a resort on it, and this bounty hunter is tracking him down, and that was really fun. And that's the type of stuff that I want to read in a Green Lantern Corps series because I love that stuff. Space bounty hunters, it's like Star Wars type of stuff. But I also like that as weird as it gets, going on different planets and everything, you still have Green Lanterns like John Stewart and Guy Gardner from Earth to kind of relate to as you're being taken on this journey. So yeah, that series is really fun. So after a couple warm-up issues, I would say, with Green Lantern, things get really interesting when the whole Sinestro Corps war starts. And this is really like the first big event after Rebirth. Sinestro gets his own corpse. He has his own yellow ring. He starts recruiting members, and it's really cool to read because it's the first corpse that's not the Green Lantern Corps. So you get to see all the Green Lanterns react to this, and they're really caught off guard by it. This first special that opens up the Sinestro Corps War is again drawn by Ethan Van Sciver. He comes back to draw this one. It's probably some of his best art at DC. I think it was nominated for an Eisner, which is well deserved. One of my favorite sections or pages is when one of the Sinestro Corps members, it's like this bug creature, it looks really cool. is basically picking off Green Lanterns, and it comes out of nowhere. It's really cool. There's this panel with Guy Gardner with blood on his face, and he's yelling, "There's a sniper!" John Stewart, he makes his construct into like a machine gun or a sniper, which is cool because I think he has a military background. So I just thought that was such an awesome little scene in that first special where he's looking for the sniper. He's got his own construct of, like a gun, like it looks like something that's from Earth. It really sets the mood because it is a full-on war. They've basically just been space cops, and now I feel like they're like a space army. So that whole special is amazing. He makes Sinestro look really sinister. He makes him look like a dictator. I mean, I think he even modeled him like after Hitler, because if you're going to try to make him the most evil guy, I mean, I guess that's who you would model him after, right? So really cool look. I like the look of the yellow lanterns as well, or whatever you want to call them, the Sinestro Corps. I don't have any of the omnibus editions of this whole run, and I really actually want them because I want to read it physically. I've been reading it on the DC app. It is intimidating because there are so many crossovers with other books, and I looked up the whole reading order. This was like a year ago, or probably like 2 years ago, and I spent all this time making kind of like you can make, for lack of a better term, a playlist of all comics that you want to read on the app. And I looked up the reading order and I put everything in order, which was like, for the first half of it, it's like 170 something issues. And it took forever, but I'm glad I did it because the experience is so much better when everything's in order. You don't have to worry about, oh, do I have to read this or that? I just have it in order, and it was great. I think the only one, because I'm trying to read everything, right? And I know you don't really have to, but I feel like it puts everything into context a little better. And I read the Ion little series spinoff with Kyle Rayner, and that was okay. It was a little forgettable, but I'm still glad I read it because Kyle Rayner, who was Green Lantern while Hal Jordan was dead, I don't know, it gave me a better sense of his character. So when he's involved in the Geoff Johns stories and in the Green Lantern Corps, I kind of feel like I know him a little better now. So I think it was worth it to read that. So I kind of talked about the Secret Origin series. I think that was 6 issues in the middle of Geoff Johns' run. He goes back, he does a little origin story, and normally I don't like that. I don't like going into the past when, it's right in the middle of this really interesting story and all you want to do is see what happens next. But like I said, he does it in a way where he adds characters and kind of retcons the origin a little bit, but in a good way. Because he introduces Atrocitus, who is this just red monster alien creature that had a problem with Abin Sur, who was the Green Lantern that gave Hal Jordan his ring. So he's involved in that. And so is Sinestro, obviously, because he helps Hal Jordan fight Atrocitus in that series. And then, like I said, he also he doesn't introduce, he brings Black Hand into it as well because he's slowly setting up stuff for Blackest Night. But aside from all that, it is just a really good origin story. You get to know Carol Ferris a lot more, who was Hal Jordan's original love interest. And you get to see their relationship form. And then also Hector Hammond, you get to see his origin as well. So it was really well done, drawn by Ivan Rice, who I think is in my top 3 for this run as far as artists. I would say, at least for this half that I'm going to talk about, because I'm going to go up to just before Blackest Night in this podcast. And then when I finish reading all that, I will do a second part to just close out the Geoff Johns Green Lantern. But I would say, my top 3 for this first half is Ethan Van Sciver, Ivan Rice, and Patrick Gleason. Because I feel like the three of them, well, Ivan Rice and Patrick Gleason ended up drawing way more issues than Ethan, but I think he just left such a mark with Rebirth and then again with Sinestro Corpse War that you just can't deny it. So, and then he also did a couple odd issues here and there. I remember the one with, is it King Shark? I don't know if it's King Shark, but anyway, that issue was great. It was really well drawn, but that was in the earlier stages of the Geoff Johns run. But really, all the artists that contribute are really good in this. After the whole Sinestro Corps war, the Green Lantern Corps series kind of goes off on its own. And there's a whole storyline with Mongol, which was okay. I mean, I was excited for it at first because Mongol is a cool character from the animated series. That's where I first knew him growing up, before I really started to read comics and enjoy that as an art form and not just the characters. But it was okay. It's still not really concluded. Maybe it will after Blackest Night. Like I said, I haven't gotten that far yet. It sets up Mongol as a potential leader for the Sinestro Corps. And then Sinestro breaks out of prison. So, they're going to go head to head. And I really want to see that fight. But I guess we got to go through Blackest Night first. The Guardians are kind of dicks. They're kind of the bad guys. And I never really knew that. I always thought they were like kind of acting as like the parents for the Green Lanterns in a loving way. But their whole thing is they show no emotion. They have no emotions. They think that's really bad for the universe. And at the start, before they came up with the Green Lanterns, they created these things called the Manhunters. But then that just totally backfired, and the Manhunters end up decimating a whole sector, a space sector. And I thought it was a little on the nose that the sector is 666. Because every sector has a number. For example, Earth is 2814, and that's what Hal Jordan is in charge of with John Stewart, and Guy Gardner. But yeah, they come up with a bunch of crazy rules throughout this series, and they're always rewriting the Book of Oa, which, has a lot of cool information in it. And one of the first really crazy rules that they put into place is that the Green Lanterns can use lethal force, which helps them out in the Sinestro Corps war. And then they eventually get a little crazy and say that no Green Lantern Corps member can date, I guess. I don't know if they meant that they can't date another Corps member or just anyone. But yeah, things start to get really crazy when all the other colors start coming into play. It does become a little too much, and I'm sure other people had that complaint. I don't know. It does have a good balance to it. They don't just throw every color at you at once. It's not like, oh, here come the Blue Lanterns and then the Red Lanterns and they're all fighting together. They do go one by one. So they introduce the Red Lanterns with Atrocitus, and then they give them their time, and then they go to the orange or the blue, which is the symbol of hope. And then Geoff Johns introduces Larfleeze, who is the only member really of the Orange Lanterns. And what he does is everyone he kills, he basically takes their identity. So all the constructs that he makes are basically his corpse, which is an interesting idea. And throughout all of this, they'll do stuff like Tales of the Sinestro Corps, and you'll get to know some of those characters a little better. And then obviously they do it with the regular Green Lantern Corps members. So you really do get a lot of backstory with everybody. It's just total world building, which I love. They even have an issue where it's basically just the who's who of every Green Lantern. So they really do a good job of filling in new readers. And then after all that, when more colors get added to this story, there's an origin story for Saint Walker, who is basically the leader of the Blue Lanterns, and then obviously Larfleeze. We get some background on him. And all the while in the background, they're setting up the Blackest Night event. And that Zero issue is really cool because most of it is a conversation between Barry Allen and Hal Jordan. And that's just interesting in itself because these are two characters that have been dead for so long and they're finally back. And they're sort of reminiscing about the old days in the Justice League, which was cool. It goes a little bit more into Black Hand and what his whole deal is and what Scar's plan is. She is the guardian that basically sets up the Black Lanterns, and then he becomes the leader of the Black Lanterns. And that's really interesting because so many people have died in the DC universe. So now there's free reign to just bring them all back as Black Lanterns to fight all the heroes that are still alive. So it's a really good setup. I'm excited to go into that. I'm going to do a part 2 for this Green Lantern series. And obviously it's going to start with Blackest Night all the way to the end of Geoff Johns' run. So I'm having a lot of fun reading this series. Like I said, it finally clicked for me, which I don't know why it didn't at first. I think it's just so much history that I didn't know. So I thought I wouldn't get into it, but it's the perfect combination for me. It's superheroes, which I love, and it's sci-fi space adventure at the same time. It's just a great combination. It's a great writer. It's a great team, or it was a great team. This is started in the early 2000s. But yeah, it's just really cool to go back to this time at DC. I feel like there were so many good series and so many good writers there. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into Blackest Night and the whole rest of this saga next time. So thanks for listening. I hope you had fun. And let me know what you thought about this whole run in the comments. I know I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I'm really getting into it. And I'm excited to finish it finally because I had a false start a couple years ago and now I'm in for the long haul and I'm going to finish it. And I'll probably dive into some of Geoff Johns' other stuff too, because I'm reading his Flash run as well, and that's really fun. So please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.